Let's break down the top UTIL-Only players up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Thursday, February 20th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and we are breaking down the top UTIL-Only, DH-Only, whatever you like to call them, players in fantasy baseball drafts. And let's start with Shohei Ohtani, who has an ADP of 1.24. He is very much so in discussion for first overall player, which makes sense. The first 50-50 season in MLB history. But he also is coming back from surgery to repair a torn labrum in his left shoulder. Scott, how high are you taking Shohei Ohtani this season?
I wish I could just default to number one because he's coming off arguably the best fantasy season of all time, first ever 50-50 player. It was a huge season that would deserve for him to go number one. But presuming it's weekly lineups or it's a league where you're just drafting the hitter, presuming you're just basically counting on the hitter stats for Ohtani, I can't in good conscience put him number one because of that shoulder surgery. It's not a minor thing, a torn labrum in his left shoulder, the main one for him as a hitter. And I think there's a chance it could impact him as a hitter. I don't think we should just presume it won't. And even if it doesn't, I feel pretty confident saying he's not going to be as aggressive of a base stealer this year. 59 steals is what Ohtani had last year. His high before that was 26. So part of his incentive to run more, I think it was just he wasn't pitching, so he was willing to risk his health a little more. But part of the reason why I think the steals are going to drop off is because that's how he hurt the shoulder, was on a stolen base attempt in the World Series. And so even without the return to pitching, it might cause him to hesitate a little to run quite that much. So I'm penciling in Ohtani for more like 20 to 25 steals rather than almost 60. And factoring in also the risk of the shoulder impacting his hitting, that's going to put him behind Bobby Witt for me in Roto leagues, 5x5 scoring leagues. It's going to put him behind Aaron Judge for me in points leagues.
And for anyone out there who plays in a daily lineup league where Ohtani is one player where you can get all of his stats, his pitching and his hitting, he is the number one overall pick, and it is not close. So if you play in that specific format, Ohtani goes number one. If it's Roto and head-to-head points, he is the number two player, according to Scott White. Then we get to a trio of Brent Rooker with an ADP of 60, Marcell Ozuna at 63, and Kyle Schwarber at 69. So going very close together in the sixth round of 12-team leagues. All three big power production is expected. Scott, how do you rank the three, and do you find yourself targeting any? Ozuna, Rooker, and Schwarber.
I have Schwarber ahead of Ozuna, ahead of Rooker, and basically I'm ranking them by floor there. I think Schwarber is the least likely to be an out-and-out bust. Rooker is the most likely, but I don't think any of them are going to be an out-and-out bust. I think they're all going basically in the same round according to my rankings. That's where I'd take them. Rooker is the most likely to pick up outfield eligibility. In fact, that's expected to happen at some point in April. And Schwarber could too, if they give JT Realmuto more time at DH as they're talking about doing. That would send Schwarber back out to the outfield. I don't think it'll happen in April, him regaining eligibility there, but it could happen. Probably won't happen for Ozuna. Probably you're just counting on Ozuna being a DH all year. But yeah, that's how I rank them. Schwarber, Ozuna, Rooker, obviously the least proven, and he clearly overperformed in batting average last year, if nothing else, as much as he strikes out. Ozuna has had ups and downs in his career, 2 great years in a row, so he's probably fine. He's probably past those ups and downs, but that inconsistent track record does make me a little hesitant with him compared to Kyle Schwarber, who hit 248 last year, big improvement in batting average. But that version of Schwarber is the one we've seen more often in his career, 240 to 260 batting average with 35 to 40 homers. I think the previous 2 years in Philadelphia, when he was more around the Mendoza line, I think it was because he was selling out too hard for power. You look at the fly ball rate in those 2 years, highest of his career, 2022, 2023. Last year, it came back down. He picked up 30, 40 points of batting average, lost about 8, 9 home runs, but I think that's a worthy trade-off, and I expect Schwarber to stick with that approach.
And both Kyle Schwarber and Marcell Ozuna are entering contract years for those who care about that type of information. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
We're under the lights in Jeddah.
I think we're in for a show.
A brand new circuit for 2025.
This is proper racing.
The first of 6 doubleheader weekends this season.
Welcome back in FBT Express. After Kyle Schwarber, you have to drop down outside the top 300 in ADP to get to the next group of UTIL-only bats. Giancarlo Stanton, Jock Peterson, and Kyle Manzardo. Stanton, bounce back season, looked great in the postseason. He's also dealing with injuries to both of his elbows already. Not sure if he's going to be ready for opening day. Jock Peterson signed a 2-year deal with the Rangers. He's coming off a great season with the D-backs last year. And Kyle Manzardo, a former top prospect, seems like he could have a real opportunity to play at least a strong side platoon role with the Guardians. Maybe that role grows into an everyday player. Scott, do you target any of these names in deeper leagues? Stanton, Jock Peterson, Kyle Manzardo?
Only in deeper leagues. We got the 4 great DH-only options at the top. But apart from them, probably done with DH onlys in a standard size league. And I might not have said that for Giancarlo Stanton. I might have considered him a late standard league option if not for this situation with the elbows. It's been described as like tennis elbow, and both of his elbows, he hasn't swung a bat for weeks. He says the pain is very high. He says it's definitely not just soreness. It doesn't sound good. And so I don't know how much I want to do with Stanton at all as long as this is going on. I think Jock Peterson has his uses. He is a strict platoon bat. So that's going to put him out of consideration for certain leagues, just that alone. But if it's a daily lineup league where you can play the matchups with him, or, as like a streamer type hitter during the season when the Rangers happen to have a lot of righties on the schedule, thinking for weekly leagues, I think Peterson is going to get a lot of use. But in terms of drafting him, probably leaving that for really deep leagues, certainly like AL only. I think Manzardo is probably more interesting than Peterson just because of the upside factor. And it's plausible he'll pick up first base eligibility somewhere along the way. But if you're looking for upsidey late round first baseman in a deep league, I'm going to default to Jonathan Aranda over Manzardo myself.
And then for even deeper leagues out there, I'll just list off the names. I don't think you really need to follow any of these or pursue any of these in fantasy. Masataka Yoshida with the Red Sox, Eloy Jimenez now with the Rays, Tyler Black with the Brewers, Andrew McCutchen with the Pirates, JD Martinez, who remains a free agent, and Matt Mervis, who was picked up by the Marlins this offseason. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.